So the topic of this video is going to be about communication, communicating with your toxic ex. This is one of those things that we end up having to do often. It's not enjoyable, and you definitely don't have fun with it. So I'm going to cover a couple of things that you need to remember whenever you're dealing with a toxic ex and you need to talk to them. Now, this could be about whatever. It could be about assets. It could be about kids. It could be about the car. It could be about a multitude of different things. All of these issues are going to basically be consistent no matter what. A little bit different whenever you have kids because there's more of a need to talk and more of a need to communicate. A lot of the other things you can just do through your attorney if you're at that stage where you have attorneys. The first thing that you need to remember whenever you're thinking about communicating with your ex is that most of the time they view communications as an ability or an opportunity to connect with you and to create havoc in your life. That's kind of what the main thing is. The other thing is typically with a toxic person, it doesn't matter whether they win or lose the argument. You engaging is their victory. So even if you can enumerate every darn point on why they're wrong and why you're right and why their thought process is flawed, it's still a victory to them because they got you to engage. They got you irritated enough to lash out and send those emails or make those phone calls or send those texts. That's one of the key things that you have to remember whenever you're dealing with a toxic individual. They love the interaction. They want the interaction. They want to get under your skin and they want to get you to react. You might notice sometimes, oftentimes, that they might even seem happy if you get completely flustered, and just them realizing that they have the power over you to elicit that reaction is a victory. I know I keep saying that in the last couple of sentences, but it's really important to remember that because I think it really makes everything going forward from this a little bit easier to comprehend and to understand. Okay, the first critical point, after you figure out what I just said, is realizing what exactly do you need to communicate? What is the purpose of the communication? For the most part, you should minimize any interaction you have with your ex unless absolutely necessary. For instance, in regards to children, oftentimes, well, not oftentimes, most of the times, you're supposed to share information. So make sure you're doing at least what you're supposed to do. And on the other side of it, if you are trying to get them to share information, realize that they're going to hold that knowledge or that information that you're wanting as a little weapon to mess with you and to get you to try to reach out to them to get that information. Appointments, status, school status, homework, whatever the deal is, just expect that. Okay, so what do you do about it? What is the solution on this whenever you are trying to communicate or you're being provoked from your toxic ex? The first thing is really dial it down to what is specifically important in that communications. For instance, if they send you an email asking for a piece of information, hypothetically, and in that email, there are 5 paragraphs calling you a worthless piece of crap parent, and you only care about yourself, and you don't care about the kids, and you this and you that. Take that piece of communication and cull it down to what is really important. If there are 5 paragraphs calling you a piece of crap, and there's 1 sentence with a legitimate question, like when is Johnny's appointment, you ignore everything else and just answer that question. Dear X, or hi X, comma, the appointment is on Thursday at 11 a.m. at Dr. Smith's office. That's it. It's real simple. Ignore everything else. If you engage with them, all they're going to do is counterpoint your, take your points and counter those points. It's just this circular do loop that accomplishes nothing. If they're trying to do something else, you're trying to get information, then you would ask the question, like for instance, on the other side of it, instead of sending you're supposed to send the information per court order, page 5, section 3, paragraph 2, it says you're supposed to share all medical information with me within 72 hours of it being found. Let's say hypothetically that's in there. If you want to send that one time, that's fine. Whatever, you need to make a point. I set that myself. After that, just ask the question. Hi X, comma, when is Johnny's appointment? Bill. Right? That's it. Leave it at that. Don't go into the diatribe of how they're a horrible parent, how they're supposed to share, how they took that parenting class, and it specifically said on slide 35 that what they're doing, they shouldn't be doing. It's counterproductive. Here's the thing. If these communications would accomplish anything, it would have accomplished something. I have not known one person who has had an interaction with their ex where they have enumerated all the points and the ex was like, oh my God, you're so right. I am just being a complete and total butthead on this. I am so sorry. Wow, I did not realize it. You know what? We need to put the good of our children ahead of all this and let's work together. Realistically, if you had that relationship, you wouldn't be at this channel. There are some people who have that and they can communicate and they can co-parent. You can have a divorce. Normal, neurotypical people can have a divorce and be adult about it and co-parent. It can happen. In our situation, it doesn't happen. And the problem is, if one person doesn't want to cooperate, then there's not going to be any cooperation. Then the problem is it's incredibly triggering whenever somebody's poking, poking you right in the eye, provoking you every chance they can get, and you want to hold them accountable. Bottom line, focus on what the priority is. If the priority has to do with the kids, you focus on the kids. If the priority has to do with when you can get the couch, you focus on that. That's it. Everything else is irrelevant. Think about it. You're separated from this person. You're more than likely in divorce proceedings. The relationship is basically over. You're not going to accomplish anything by arguing with somebody. It's not going to happen. They're not going to relent. This isn't like whenever we were married to the person or still living with the person and somebody had to relent, because otherwise it's just going to be a knockdown, drag out, and it'll just be a nightmare. I know there were many times in my relationship when I was married where I would just, crap, I need to back off on this one because, at some point I need to go to sleep. Some point we need to hit the reset button and start. As soon as that is over, as soon as nobody has a vested interest in this relationship anymore, technically we have a vested interest in the relationship. What I mean is whenever a narcissistic, toxic personality does not view any value in you and the relationship anymore, you will never get any cooperation from them. It will never happen. You are basically wasting your energy, beating your head against the wall to try to get them to see your point. Focus on the big picture issue. If it's something to do with the kids, focus on that. For instance, I can roll back the clock and think back to some communications I had that didn't really follow this plan, what I'm talking about. My oldest son at the time was having a really tough time and was failing a lot of his classes in junior high. I offered to, let me take him and I will do his homework with him on these days. I won't even spend the night. The effective way to send that communication, which the answer was going to be no matter what, but just follow me here for a second, would have been to send, Dear X, comma, I know little Johnny is having problems with school, period. I would like to offer that I could pick him up after school or pick him up when I get home from work for an hour. I will do his homework with him and bring him back to you, period. That's it, simple. You could probably I just did this off the cuff, so you could probably even shorten that down. Expect that the answer is going to be no, and leave it at that. Take it, file it in your documentation if you're still in litigation for court to potentially use it as evidence, and let it go. What you don't want to do, which is what I did, is sit there and tell them why they are not co-parenting well, why they're not putting the best interests of the children ahead of anything else, why they're just doing this to be difficult, it's hurting the kids, that type of thing. It isn't going to accomplish anything. I get that you probably are going to have to do that at least once. And if you have to do it once, that's fine. Do it once. Send the email. Make a note of it. Say, okay, I'm going to say these things. I'm going to enumerate point by point, and then see what happens. If you get that email that says, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you are correct, send me an email and let me know how that happens so I can add it as a data point. of a successful way that was used. 90% of the time, or 99.9% of the time, you are going to either get a vicious attack on why you are a piece of crap and why this whole situation is your fault. And the answer is ultimately more than likely going to be no, because they always like to say no. If they can say no to what you want, they're going to say no. Now, conversely, if they want you to take, like in that situation, if the ex would have wanted me to take my son to do that and thought that I didn't want to do that, there's a pretty good chance that that probably would have happened. You can oftentimes use reverse psychology in these situations to accomplish some goals. It doesn't work all the time, and to be perfectly honest, in the early stages when you're really angry and bitter and frustrated, it's really hard to do. I wasn't able to do that. Maybe you are. The main thing is just minimize the communication you have with your ex. It's counterproductive. They're going to use it to try to burrow under your defenses. They are going to try to manipulate the situation to try to trigger you, to provoke you, to get you to respond. Worst case scenario, if you do respond, they just feel that their tanks are full of narcissistic supply and they feel successful. It progressively gets worse from that. The next phase of that is it ends up in court documentation that you are a difficult person, unwilling to cooperate, and they will project everything they're doing onto they're doing to you, that you're doing to them, and put it in court documents. Ramp that up even more. They will use that to show that try to show that you're abusive, that a restraining order is warranted, that they are in fear of you, and use that to use the court system to minimize or eliminate your contact with them and potentially your children. You have to really be cautious of that, because that's their one gotcha card that they can use to really wreak some serious havoc in these situations. The other thing I want to say is please, please, please do not do these communications in person. Do not do these communications over phone. Preferably do it all via email, and even preferable over that, use something like Our Family Wizard, Our Talking Parents, to be able, our two households, to be able to do that. You do not want to have one-on-one interaction with your ex in real time, because it makes it very much more likely that they can provoke you and get you to respond in a way that's not great. The thing about one-on-one communication is that can be misconstrued if you don't have a witness, where they could turn around and say that they were in fear and potentially seek a restraining order or an order of protection. I've known a few people that has happened to. It's just, don't even put yourself in that situation. Excuse yourself if they want to talk. Just say, hey, you know what? Send it to me in an email. I got to run. We're running late, but send it to me in an email, and do it that way. The last thing I want to mention on this is take your time. Slow down. If you have to pound out an angry email, don't send it. Somebody recommended in one of the live streams the other day, don't even put their name in the send box, so that way you don't accidentally hit send. I think open up a separate document, write it in a Word document if you're if you're using Microsoft Word. I use Ulysses to do my writing. I mean, whatever it is, notepad, pen and paper, whatever the heck it is you can do, write it down, get that frustration out, and then do not send that email. Go back and edit it or delete it, or if you wrote it on paper, burn the damn thing. Don't send that version. When you finish, take a break, go walk around the block, do something to give you some time to think about what happened, to calm down, and to think about what I'm talking about on this, and really look at it and say, okay, do I need to say what I'm saying in this email? Does it address the points I really need that are really important? The flip side to this, if you can do this and you document or you copy all these documentations, if you end up in court, more than likely you'll have a laundry list of them basically going off on you, and you'll have a bunch of examples where you were being reasonable, staying focused on the kids, that's your priority, that you didn't even take the bait with what they were trying to provoke you with. It'll be very apparent if you can do that. The sad part is most of the time when we respond, even if we think that we're hitting points in a nice way, someone else reading it most of the time will read it as condescending. then it hurts your credibility because they will lump both of you in the same bucket, that you're both being difficult, that you're both acting immature, and that you're both focusing on your anger and not what's best on the kids. Keep that forefront. If it's the kids, if it's other stuff, whatever it is, whatever the issue is, focus on that. Everything else is irrelevant. They tell you that you're ugly and you'll never meet anybody. It's irrelevant. They tell you that you're a horrible person. Doesn't matter. They tell you that you cheated even if you didn't cheat. It doesn't matter. None of those things matter. Focus on what is the real issue. So if you have some things that you have used to help you deal with it, share them in the description or in the comments below. That could be really helpful for people who are struggling with this. Plus, I like to see what other people are doing and how they're able to navigate this in a hopefully positive way. You know, the whole goal is to not make to minimize the amount of mistakes that we make so that we make this a little bit easier. I mean, it's not easy at all, but make it a little less crazy. If you think that this channel is helpful and it's helping you, please consider subscribing, ring the bell notification so that YouTube will actually tell you about videos. If you think somebody could use this video, please consider sharing it with them. Maybe we can raise the awareness, get some other people out from under the fog or out of the fog to start seeing things clearly and making a positive difference in their situation. On that, I hope you're doing okay, and I will chat with you on the next video. Take care.